Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
I'm going to do something on today's episode that probably would make a lot of people upset. Two things I'm going to do. One, I am going to read a large portion of the El Paso terrorists manifesto. I'm going to read probably 90% of the manifesto. The only portions that I believe I'm going to leave out are the portions where he describes. Actually, no, I think I'll discuss the portion where he describes his weapons and the why he chose the weapons that he chose. I'm going to do that. And then the second thing I'm going to do that's going to make a lot of people upset is that I'm going to speak about this as if I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. I don't care. Because why should we? Right? Why should we care when we have clearly demonstrated as a nation that there's literally nothing that we're going to do? So there's no reason why I should talk about this with any sense of sentimentality or any sense of any sensitivity, sentimentality. But like, there's really why. You know, people are dead. They're dead. And they're dead because we played the same game over and over and over again. Whenever somebody commits a mass shooting of some type, we all sit on the sidelines and we're all in front of our televisions or in front of our phones, and we're just waiting to find out who the shooter was or what was their political affiliation. What did they believe? And we're all just like, you know, you have people who sandbag it and try to put out false information to say, oh, I heard the shooter was a leftist and he loved Elizabeth Warren, or you have other people, you know, you just have people. Because the people who do this game of charades, in between the time we hear about a mass shooting and the time we find out who that person was. And the reason is because whoever that person was, it's going to be used for a political agenda. Now, here's where there is a false dichotomy. Before I even get into the manifesto, the false dichotomy is this. There's a false equivalence, rather, that's drawn between the politicization of mass shootings by those of us who want to stop mass shootings and the politicization of mass shootings by those people who want nothing more than to protect the NRA and their quote unquote Second Amendment. I for the love of all things, I can't afford to care anymore. Because America, we don't really care. We don't really care. Do you see how quickly we moved past the previous mass shooting? I don't even remember the state the two mass shootings ago occurred. I mean, they're so frequent. We had two in the 13-hour period. Over almost 30 people killed. We don't really care. Because if we cared, we would do something. But we stopped caring after that dude went in that elementary school and shot all those babies. Once Sandy Hook happened, nobody cared anymore. We were all dead on the inside. We're all, you know, unless it just comes to our backyard and kills somebody that we know and we love. We all participate in this game the same way. And it's not a false equivalence, or what I'm trying to convey to you is not a false equivalence. Like, there are those of us who legitimately want and understand the best way for us to confront this. Right? But we have to contend with a percentage of the electorate and a percentage of the politically active people who are going to willingly misconstrue everything about this for the purposes of making sure. All right, let me get specific. You Republican assholes, you are going to intentionally deflect, deny, and deceive. You're going to foment, like Donald Trump did this morning, foment more hatred and point the finger towards the media, because that is the easiest way for him to weasel his slimy, Orange Julius looking ass out of being the reason this shooting occurred. But when you listen to this manifesto, you realize that he is saying the exact same things that Donald Trump says from the White House. We have half of this country who will gladly say that this is about violent video games when there's no evidence whatsoever that this cornball motherfucker played a single video game. But there's a complete, well thought out, he is able to communicate his intention, and yet, through this manifesto, and yet they're going to blame people who suffer from mental illness. No, if you read this manifesto, this guy was methodical. He understood the justifications behind it, his justifications behind what he was doing. He understood all the way down to the final detail of him being a little upset because he had to use a civilian style AK-47, but the civilian style AK-47 kind of overheats. So he bought some heat insulated gloves to compensate for the overheating of the gun that he was going to use to do this mass shooting. So it is critical that we discuss. It is vitally critical that we discuss his manifesto, because it shows you that there was nothing mentally wrong with this kid. This grown ass man who went in and killed children and adults. I mean, I say children like that's going to make some more impact, but these scumbags, these deplorables, y'all didn't want to call these people deplorables. I want to take a sidebar for every one of you who had an issue with Hillary Clinton calling these scumbags deplorable. Do you get it now? Do you get it? See, I would rather not discuss this with my anger, because that shit just runs my blood pressure up. I would rather laugh and joke about this, but I'm not sure you guys are ready for me to make jokes about mass shootings, right? Cause the first thing that comes to mind is you guys know who these next mass shooters are going to be. You knew as soon as you looked over little Johnny's shoulder in class and you saw that while every other little boy in school was looking at pornography, Johnny was picking out sniper rifles. An alarm should have went off in your head that this might be the next mass shooter. You knew when he was going into his basement, bringing in guns, bringing in body armor, bringing in ammunition. You knew he was probably going to be the next mass shooter. You just weren't sure whether or not he was going to shoot you or shoot up your school. So you just kept your mouth shut so that you wouldn't get shot. I understand. I don't know who Johnny going to shoot, but he ain't going to shoot me. You knew when you checked his browser history and he was looking more at Saudi Arabia executions than he was at pussy. You knew. You know who else knew? The checkout clerk at the hunting goods store. They knew, because here's a loser ass checking out, buying body armor and ammunition, and you look at this cornball motherfucker, you this guy couldn't possibly be on the SWAT team. That's your warning signal. And you just sitting there checking them out, ringing them up. Boop. How's your day going, sir? Boop. Ringing up 100-round magazine. Boop. Ringing up body armor. Boop. And for not 1 second did it cross your mind that this loser ass motherfucker in front of you isn't the next mass shooter? Give me a break. Boop. You just ring it up. You're literally checking out the next mass shooter. Boop. Y'all know who these people are, man. Black people, we understand. Some of y'all, I understand. I was at a job one time and I knew a dude and I'm like, he's going to be the next mass shooter. And you know what I did? I befriended that motherfucker. He wasn't going to kill me. I checked on that motherfucker every single day. I'm like, hey, Joey, can I, what you doing for lunch? How are you feeling today, Joey? Are you feeling, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning you might want to blow some shit up, and 10 being you're having a spectacular day? How are you feeling? If that motherfucker said anything less than a 5, I was going to buy his lunch. I was going to make sure that he was, cause if he came in and shot up everybody, he wasn't going to shoot me. I would be the last man standing. This motherfucker used to pick his nose and eat his boogers. A grown ass man picking his nose and eating his boogers on the job. That's a warning signal, guys. That's a warning signal. I used to look over my shoulder now. I would hope when I looked over his shoulder that he would be looking at like Pornhub. But this motherfucker was looking at sniper rifles and silencers. I'm like, oh my God, this dude is about to be a mass shooter. I mean, what do you do in that situation? I don't know how you stop somebody from becoming a mass shooter, but all I knew was I'm going to be nice to this motherfucker. He's not going to shoot me. Boop. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm seriously though. I don't know how we deal with this except for head on. Like, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever for people to pretend like mass shooters are the Candyman. Like, if you say their name, then they're going to appear even more. Like, don't say their name on air. Don't say, like, the most noble thing that you could do is not say this person's name on the air. That does absolutely nothing. Do you realize that the kids that are being radicalized by a couple of things, one of it is right-wing nationalism, and I've covered that in great detail. There is right-wing nationalism, white supremacy that is oozing out of the White House like never before in our lifetimes. And that is clearly a radicalization tool. And you'll see that as I read this manifesto. But there are other aspects to this that are not a result of the copycat phenomenon. In other words, what's motivating these kids to do these men to do these things is not the fact that they want notoriety and be famous. See what happened was, like, liberals, y'all make me sick, man. Y'all saw one episode of Special Victims SVU, and you saw in that episode that motherfucker wanted to be famous, and now it's like a light bulb went off in your head, like, oh, if we just don't say their name, then we won't have another copycat phenomenon. Shut the hell up. We just don't share the manifesto. You can't even share the manifesto on Twitter. Do you all realize that sharing this guy's manifesto so people can see how precise he was in his thinking, we could do away with on the liberal side, like to be sure there's nothing we can do to stop Republicans from engaging dishonestly because they are dishonest actors. They will look at this manifesto where he methodically laid out the reasons why and the methods of how he was going to do it. They will look at that and say, well, the real problem is that we just need a little more Jesus in school. So I can't never expect Republicans to engage honestly, but there are a lot of ignorant and obtuse motherfuckers on the left who still blame mental health. And when you read this manifesto, you realize that this guy was anything but mentally unstable. And we keep using mental instability or mental health problems as a catch-all to cover things that we're not ready to jump into and explain. Like, we're not ready. They used to blame homosexuality as a mental health disorder. Well, we're not ready to really discuss like with the fact that some men like other men, and so let's just label that as a mental health disorder. That's what we do. Everything that we're not ready to discuss or anything that makes us uncomfortable, or in the case of Republicans, anything that becomes a legitimate threat to the ideology that we try to spread across this country, we label as mental health. And then when that fails, we're like, oh, well, they just aren't praying in school anymore. And that fails, oh, the video games are too violent. As if they don't have violent video games in Japan. So there are so many reasons these shootings continue to happen that do not include the copycat phenomenon or the stardom. Like, they want to become, these kids don't want to become stars. They want to start a revolution. Okay. Enough with the preamble. I'm going to breathe for 3 seconds while this music plays, and then I'm going to read this manifesto. All right, so this manifesto, and this I already explained in the previous segment why I'm reading it. I'll give commentary as I go. It's entitled "The Inconvenient Truth About Me." Now, honestly, I don't even know the shooter's name. I never take the time to learn their names with rare occasions. Like, certain names just stand out. But I don't care who this guy is. I'm not saying his name because I don't want to make him famous or like the boogeyman phenomenon. I'm not saying his name because I didn't care to learn it. Okay. If I knew his name, I'd say his name. But the inconvenient truth about me is what he entitled this thing. He said, in general, I support Christchurch shooter and his manifesto. This attack was a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. They are the instigators, not me. I am simply defending my country from cultural and ethnic replacement, white genocide, brought on by an invasion. Literal language from Donald Trump. Hopefully you can understand the difference between my commentary and reading, right? The sarcastic bits are going to be mean. Some people will think this is a statement. This statement is hypocritical because of the nearly complete ethnic and cultural destruction brought to the Native Americans by our European ancestors. But this just reinforces my point. The natives didn't take the invasion of Europeans seriously, and now what's left is just a shadow of what was. My motives for this attack are not at all personal. Actually, the Hispanic community was not my target before I read The Great Replacement. This manifesto will cover the political and economic reasons behind the attack, my gear, my expectations of what response this will generate, and my personal motivations and thoughts. Now, The Great Replacement is a somewhat of a manifesto itself, a right-wing manifesto created by a French a French white supremacist that basically does what it says. It discusses what it says, the Great Replacement. So that's what this guy is talking about. Let's continue with the manifesto. Political reasons. In short, America is rotting from the inside out, and peaceful means to stop this seems to be nearly impossible. The inconvenient truth is that our leaders, both Democrat and Republicans, have been failing us for decades. They are either complacent or involved in one of the biggest betrayals of the American public in our history, the takeover of the United States government by unchecked corporations. I could write a 10-page essay on all the damage these corporations have caused, but here is what is important. Due to the death of the baby boomers, the increasingly anti-immigrant rhetoric of the right, and the ever-increasing Hispanic population, America will soon become a one-party state. The Democratic Party will own America, and they know it. They have already begun the transition by pandering heavily to the Hispanic voting bloc in the first Democratic debate. They intend to use open borders, free health care for illegals, citizenship, and more. And I have to pause. So in this guy's mind, look at this idiotic jujitsu that he does. In his mind, the problem of corporations and the problem of right-wing rhetoric is going to lead to the great replacement of white people. Some of you already got it, but let me say that again. So in his mind, the solution to the problem of a corporatocracy and the solution to the problem of far right wing rhetoric towards immigrants, the solution to him is a one-party, the inevitable solution is a one-party democratic system of pandering to Hispanics. Instead of, say, I don't know, let's address the corporations, let's address their control over society, let's address that from an economic perspective, and instead of saying, why don't we address this right-wing rhetoric, he's saying that the response to corporatism and the response to this xenophobic rhetoric from the right is that Democrats are going to win. And that's something that he could not tolerate. He cannot tolerate the idea that as a result of corporatism and as a result of xenophobia, Democrats are going to win by pandering to Hispanics. Do you see the psychosis? So it's like a double victim blaming. He's saying because corporations are screwing America and because corporations are getting all this cheap labor from immigrants and because right-wingers are so xenophobic, it's inevitable that people are going to respond by getting rid of the Republican Party, the right-wingers who are xenophobic. And he said, that's something we can't tolerate. So what do? I start this mass shooting. I try to start a revolution. Okay. All right, let's continue. He said the Democratic Party basically has already begun the transition by pandering heavily to the Hispanic voting bloc in the first Democratic debate. They intend to use open borders, free health care for illegal citizenship and for illegals and citizenship and more to enact a political coup by importing and then legalizing millions of new voters. This is literally a Republican talking point. This is the stuff that not only Fox News, not only Donald Trump, but the Veritas guy, the Veritas, the guy who runs around and dresses up like a pimp and tries whatever his name is. This is literally what all of them pander to their base with. They intend to use open borders, free health care for illegal citizenship, and more to enact a political coup by importing and then legalizing millions of new voters. With policies like these, the Hispanic support for the Democrats will likely become nearly unanimous in the future. The heavy Hispanic population in Texas will make us a Democratic stronghold. Losing Texas and a few other states with heavy Hispanic population to the Democrats is all that it would take for them to win nearly every presidential election. Although the Republican Party is also terrible. You know, sidebar. I remember when I went to the white nationalist rally, a Nazi rally here in Georgia, and I covered it. What stood out the most to me was that the Nazis, who generally supported the Republican Party because of their anti-immigration rhetoric, were disgusted with the Republican Party because the anti-immigrant push did not go far enough. In other words, they were supporters and proud of Donald Trump. They just thought Donald Trump wasn't going far enough. This is how this reads. With policies like these, the Hispanic support for Democrats will likely become nearly unanimous in the future. The heavy Hispanic population in Texas will make us a Democratic stronghold. Losing Texas and a few other states with heavy Hispanic population to the Democrats is all that it would take for them to win nearly every presidential election. Although the Republican Party is also terrible, many factions within the Republican Party are pro-corporation. Pro-corporation equals pro-immigration. But some factions within the Republican Party don't prioritize corporations over our future. So the Democrats are nearly unanimous with their support of immigration while Republicans are divided over it. At least with Republicans, the process of mass immigration and citizenship can be greatly reduced. I hadn't even read that line yet. Didn't I call it? I called it. Because it's like clockwork. Hatred is so predictable, which is why I know you people know who the next mass shooter is going to be. Everybody always talks about afterwards, oh, I can't believe little Timmy would do something like this. Little Timmy has been stockpiling guns in your basement for over a year. Right. He did not have enough money to buy all this at once. He's been stockpiling for over a year. And you mean to tell me that you don't have enough wherewithal to know that someone is building bombs in your basement?This guy's, I said, hate is very predictable. They only have a few set of actions that they have taken through history, and they wash, rinse, and repeat over and over again. And what this guy is saying in this manifesto is literally exactly what I heard from the Nazis when they came to Noonan, Georgia about a year and a half ago. Economic reasons. Look at this. He's actually a fairly decent writer. Not that people with mental health problems can't be writers, but the idea, what they do is they just say mental health to make it seem like the mass shooter was just crazy. Like, I'm going here to kill some. No, this guy was methodical. His thought processes were well thought out. It's just his brain was wired for hatred and blaming Hispanics instead of the system. When you have decided that you are going to blame victims of the system more than the system itself, that's when you start going out here and committing hate crimes. And that's generally what a faction, not a fraction, I was going to say a fraction, but a faction of the right, their entire construct is that this world, this system is supposed to serve them. Get your pens ready, because this is the $1 million point right here. People like this shooter, and even the shooter in Dayton, Ohio, they have this preconceived notion that this American system is supposed to benefit them, because the only thing that they were actually delusional about, right? They thought out everything else, but the thing that they were delusional about was that the American dream was actually meant to benefit them. They thought because they were white men that they were entitled to wealth and riches and fame and fortune and women. Had to catch myself. I almost went with the rhyme. They think that they are like money, hoes, and clothes. That's what they believe that they are entitled to. And when they realize that they don't get that the American dream is a lie and a delusion, instead of blaming the system and tearing down the system, instead of shooting up, they shoot at children. Scumbag man, look here. Y'all know, I'm going to say this through the rest of the show. You guys know who the next mass shooter is going to be. Somebody out there has a disenfranchised, not politically, not a voter disenfranchisement, but they just feel disenchanted with their lives. They feel like they are supposed to have to work at Chipotle. I mean, by all means, they are white men. America was made for white men. So why are they having to live a life like a Hispanic? They're supposed to be able to live the rich and famous life that they see, on Instagram. This, of course, this is all exacerbated by like what Samuel Huntington called the gap theory. Like, you have civil unrest when people are exposed and they're exposed to the wealth gap that exists between their reality and what they see. And the social media clearly exacerbates that, like 100% so. But while the rest of us look at it and say, tear down this system, tear down capitalism, you have a faction that says, no, it's the Hispanics. Let's go shoot up some Hispanic babies. This is it. So here's his economic reasons. In short, immigration can only be detrimental to the future of America. Donald Trump said this. Continued immigration will make one of the biggest issues of our time, automation, so much worse. Here is Andrew Yang. Y'all gonna hate me, but this is where Andrew Yang's rhetoric on automation, devoid of any cultural sensitivity, devoid of any confrontation of white supremacy, allows white supremacy to be adjacent to his campaign. In other words, he ain't calling this shit out, and they're coming to hide right in his campaign, and they can hide and say, oh, I can't be a racist because he's clearly not white. Andrew Yang is Asian descent, so that means I'm not a racist. You don't understand how this thing works. I mean, white supremacy, the funniest thing about white supremacy to me is that they take a second seat to the IQ science that believes that Asians are smarter than them. So white supremacists can simultaneously stand side by side with someone who's Asian and still be racist towards everyone else. But in order to prove their science, their IQ science, that black people and Hispanics are intellectually more inferior, they accept the fact that Asians are genetically superior to them. Oh, man. It's going to be a lot of crazy shit in today's episode. I can tell you that much. I'm not apologizing for a goddamn thing either. You know why? Because y'all didn't care. I mean, not you, my listener, but America in general didn't care when they gunned down like that. When Sandy Hook happened, I believe it was December 14th. I could be off by one day or two, but I remember where I was, what I was doing. I had just brought my students back in I took them outside to play a game of basketball. I brought them back in just before Christmas break, excited about Christmas break, the last hour of the day, last fucking hour of the day. And we get this news that at the time, my first text message, alert that came from the AP was that 14 kids had been killed. And when I realized that we weren't going to do anything about Sandy Hook, what's the point? What's the point of us caring? What is the point of us? Hell, I just looked it up. I got it damn right. December 14th. I remember that shit like it was yesterday. 2012. I was in Jacksonville, Florida at the time. So if I say something that you think is beyond the pale or irreverent, good. Economic reasons. So in short, automation. Let's get back to the automation part. Invaders. Actually, let me go up a paragraph. Of course, some people will be retrained, but most will not. So it makes no sense to keep on letting millions of illegal or legal immigrants flood into the United States and keep tens of millions that are already here. Invaders who also have close to the highest birth rate of all ethnicities in America. In the near future, America will have to initiate a basic universal income to prevent widespread poverty and civil unrest as people lose their jobs. See, guys, when you see me tweet about Andrew Yang's alt-right adjacent campaign, this is the rhetoric right here. Joblessness in itself is a source of civil unrest. The less dependence on a government welfare system, the better. A true Republican. This is the true Republican coming out of this guy right here. The lower the unemployment rate, the better. Achieving ambitious social projects like universal health care and UBI will become far more likely to succeed if tens of millions of dependents are removed. You guys are this paragraph that I just got through reading should help everyone on the left understand that there is not a far cry from being a supporter of leftist ideas and being a white supremacist who looks down. Like we've got, and this should be evident because you have a lot of people on the left, not a lot. Let me choose my words better. You have a group of people on the left who are as comfortable with having a red-brown alliance, basically meaning a communist and a fascist alliance, which historically makes no sense. But they have been pushing that idea for years now on the left. Because they're not, those ideas, this is socialism and the individual policies that are representative of socialism, they are not mutually exclusive. You can be a white supremacist socialist, or better yet, more precisely, you could be a white supremacist who likes a couple of socialist ideas, policies. So everybody who's running around here saying UBI and single payer, Medicare for all, everybody who's saying that, they are not like some woke social justice warrior who's going to defend the most marginalized. Can we be clear on that? Because this paragraph demonstrates that right there. This is literally the economic populism that Donald Trump said he was going to bring to America at the expense of Mexicans and immigrants. But Donald Trump never did that because at the core of Donald Trump, he is an uber capitalist. He is a neoliberal who's going to do things to benefit corporations, or has done things to benefit corporations and the wealthiest. But what this kid wanted was some economic nationalism. That's what he wanted. And that's become the flavor, like the alternate flavor to those of us who are really socialists. The alternate flavor is the alt-right, because they want some of these socialist ideas are okay. We just don't want to give it to the Mexicans. Joblessness in itself is a source of civil unrest. I read that. Even though new migrants do the dirty work, their kids typically don't. Oh, so now he has a problem with, it's we're okay if you come here and do the dirty work, but if you have kids here and they become citizens, like, fuck that. That's what he's saying here. They want to live the American dream, which is why they get college degrees and fill higher paying skilled jobs. This is why corporations lobby for even more illegal immigration, even after decades of it happening. They need to, here's the other thing. Can I pause for a second? This kid sees a problem with corporations, but not the problem with corporations, which is the hoarding of wealth and the accumulation of wealth to the richest people in this country through the tools of a corporation. He doesn't see that. He says, "Oh, corporations, they want to look good, so they hire the children of immigrants because they want to be social justice warrior corporations." And instead of him tearing down the system that has exploited his dumbass, he goes and shoots children. I'm going to skip a little bit because I'm already at 40 minutes here. The American lifestyle affords our citizens an incredible quality of life. However, our lifestyle is destroying the environment of our country. Wow. A white nationalist that actually is concerned about our environment? Yes. You know why? Because those things are not mutually exclusive. I was talking with some friends yesterday, and I guarantee you, if you want to see the boldest and the most draconian action on the environment, like if you really want to see action take place, wait until people find out how they can make trillions of dollars with the technology that's going to be needed to help us survive this climate disaster. Then you're going to see quite a bit of action. I mean, then you're going to see the government spending trillions of dollars to protect us from the climate disaster. Oh, but that's not it. The other side of this is wait until conservatives can see how they can use nationalism, or they can use this climate disaster to embolden their nationalistic agenda, their xenophobic agenda. In other words, they will shut down all borders in the name of climate change, preventing and slowing down climate change, because we don't have enough resources here to help all those people. We have to put our resources into shoring up the environment. We can't spend our money on a safety net. We have to spend, especially not a safety net that illegals use. We have to spend our money on protecting the environment. Yeah. This is what liberals get wrong, man. Liberals and progressives get wrong. Like, you think the biggest motivation for people is going to be to do the right thing, when there's a big faction, there's a huge percentage of America that will only respond to hate and anger and money, right? Obviously money, right? So you're going to have the wealthiest capitalists who are going to respond to the amount of money. Wait until the big oil companies figure out how much money they can make taking CO2 out of the air with some new technology that doesn't exist currently. When that comes, you're going to see BP, you're going to see Chevron, you're going to see Exxon, you're going to see all these large oil companies pivoting. So because they're going to see there's trillions of dollars waiting for them. Simultaneously, you're going to see people like Donald Trump, whoever's going to be the Donald Trump of the next 10 years, you're going to see them peddling the most horrific, xenophobic, closed borders, no resources, no asylum. Yes, we destabilize your entire region, but you can't come here because we have to consider the environment, and we have to preserve our resources to protect our environment. As you can see, what I'm trying to help you to see is that all of the great ideas that we believe we need for the future are not mutually exclusive from hate and white supremacy. And so unless you address that hate and that white supremacy directly, you will have some twisted bastard out there who is going to use your good idea as justification for his massacres. All right, let me get back to the manifesto. Even though the new migrants do the dirty work, their kids typically don't. They want to live in the American dream, which is why they get college degrees and feel higher paying skilled jobs. This is why corporations lobby for even more illegal immigration. Even after decades of it happening, they need to keep replenishing the low skilled labor pool. Even as migrant children flood skilled jobs, corporations make this worse by lobbying for even more work visas to be issued for skilled foreign workers to come here. Recently, the Senate, under a Republican administration, has greatly increased the number of foreign workers that will take American jobs. Remember that both Democrats and Republicans support immigration and work visas. Corporations now remember also that this guy a few minutes ago said, well, at least Republicans are stopping this immigration flood. So he has this ambivalent relationship with Republicans. But it's not one that leans towards any type of social justice. It's not one that leans towards any type of fighting against the bad things about the Republican Party. His ambivalence with the Republican Party is that they don't go far enough. Except for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump and Stephen Miller had their way. There is one paragraph that I read. I'm going to skip over a couple of things here. Because time, it's almost an hour now. Personal reasons and thoughts. This is key, man. I thought about this while I was smoking yesterday. He said this: My whole life, I have been preparing for a future that currently doesn't exist. The job of my dreams will be likely automated. Hispanics will take control of the local and state government of my beloved Texas, changing policy to better suit their needs. They will turn Texas into an instrument of a political coup, which will hasten the destruction of our country. Literally Republican talking points. The environment is getting worse by the year. If you take nothing else from this document, remember this: inaction is a choice. I can no longer bear the shame of inaction, knowing that our founding fathers gave us and have endowed me with the rights needed to save our country from the brink of destruction. And here's a critical line that I tweeted about. Our European comrades don't have the gun rights needed to repel the millions of invaders that plague their country. They have no choice but to sit by and watch their countries burn. Bruh. He's literally admitting that last paragraph, there's so much in there that this is why we have to discuss the manifesto. At the very end, he's literally admitting that gun control would have been able to stop him. He literally says himself, if we had the laws that Europe had, then I wouldn't be able to do this. So for every person out there that's saying gun laws won't stop, no. The killer from this weekend said himself, European gun laws stop our fascistic allies in Europe from getting involved in this fight. Gun law, and he's right. Gun laws could have stopped this. You're not. This is the one area, like, I guess this is what drives me crazy. Republicans always say, you're never going to stop racism. You're never going to be able to stop racism. You're not. You're not going to be able to change. You can't legislate morality. You're right. We can't. That's why we pass laws to keep them from getting weapons where they can go out and act on their hatred. And that's why we get people like you out of office, because you use that hatred to maintain power. Gun laws could have prevented this, and the shooter himself admits as much. But at the beginning of this paragraph, the last one that I'm going to read, I've already read it. But at the beginning of that last paragraph that I just read, God, he says, my whole life, I have been preparing for a future that currently doesn't exist. The job of my dreams will likely be automated. This fool actually thought that the American dream was for him. And the reason I put this in the category of white male privilege is because it's the expectation that this was his. And the only reason he's not getting it is because of illegals and automation. And so he doesn't attack the system. He attacks the people. He attacks the victims of the system. The biggest delusion that we all suffer from, this is the last thing I'll say. I have nothing to say about this guy other than big dummy. You weren't entitled to money, hoes, and clothes just because you're a white dude. Do you realize for every successful white person you see, every Connor and Tanner and Biff and all these rich white guys who are living the dream that you wanted, there's probably about 500,000 other people who are struggling worse than you. So the odds are you're never going to live the American dream that you see online and that you see on TV. You got your hopes up for shit. That's the reality. But, these motherfuckers are just walking around here like, oh, I'm supposed to have this. They literally have it in their mind that this is what that they have the right to the American dream. And once they realize this American dream ain't about shit, you make one or two decisions. You either fight the system or you blame the victims. And nowhere in this manifesto did this guy say that he wanted to fight the system. He blamed every one of his problems, every one of his shortcomings. The fact, I wonder if he had anything in here about relationships. Probably not. But my best guess is that this dude had no women in his life, or men for that matter. He was sexually deprived. He couldn't get any. sometimes, I mean, well, that's a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to talk about that conversation. But the point is that when you have an expectation that America is supposed to serve you, and then you realize that America treats you economically just like anybody else, that you don't mean shit to America, the American dream is laughing at you, you decide whether or not who's to blame. And for a huge faction, a huge percentage of America, they blame the victims. And then for another percentage of America, they take that as a reason for them to act. I don't care to understand the mind of a shooter for the purposes of understanding him. I want us to understand the mind of the shooter for the purposes of telling you people out there, you know who the next person is going to be. You see him posting online. Now, I don't know exactly what that means you could do about it, because, I'm not sure how you report a potential shooter. That's the kind of stuff the FBI does. FBI, they're so busy looking at black identity extremists that they're not paying attention to 8chan and 4chan, which is literally every single shooter that we know of in this last generation has had some ties to 4chan and 8chan. They post it there, or they made some reference to it. Or you'll see that the ideology, even if they weren't directly participants on those forums, you will see that the ideology in this manifesto is pervasive on those platforms. It's so pervasive on the internet that you find it on Twitter, you find it on YouTube, and you find it in softer versions, right? You find it, obviously, you don't find it where people say, hey, this is the next step. Get you an AK-47. Make sure that you have the military grade so it doesn't overheat. They're not going to be saying that, but they would be saying everything else. You could turn on Fox News and Tucker Carlson and hear this same rhetoric about the invasion of the illegals. You can listen to Andrew Yang. You can listen to him talking about automation. You can listen to him talking about the problems that can be solved by universal basic income. And because there is an absence of critical analysis and outright condemnation of white supremacy, then all of the dude bros who believe like this shooter, who believe that we should have universal basic income because automation is coming. You know what? Let me stop. Let me say it like this. White supremacy is evolving with the times. White supremacy understands that there's going to be a climate disaster. Conservatives in the Republican Party, they don't give a shit about that. But young white nationalists, they understand. They also understand that automation is going to be the natural result of technology and capitalism. They understand that. Do you think that white nationalists in 2019 are going to be the same as white nationalists in 1943? No. They will have adapted some form of eco-terrorism, or they would have adopted a rhetoric and ideology that could be inclusive of eco-terrorism, but not eco-terrorism targeting the system that's destroying the environment, eco-terrorism killing the victims. This all boils down to, I don't even care this episode. I don't care. I don't care. It all boils down to, who do you point your anger towards? The system or the people? And the Republican Party for years has mastered the art of keeping their impoverished and their disenchanted voters in line by feeding them the hatred of immigrants and minorities, people of color, and specifically black people, and specifically Mexicans. They've mastered that art. And so you see people who look at this and they know that their ideology has blood on their hands, and they'll say things like, it was mental health. And everything that I've read to you, and it's not to suggest that people with mental health problems are incapable of coherent thinking. No, that's not what I'm saying. What they are saying, what Republicans are clearly saying, is that this type of event when it occurs from a white supremacist, can only be the result of someone who's mentally unstable. But when you read this guy is methodical. He has a political ideology that is clearly thought out, and there is a justification of his actions based on the political ideology. Period, Pooh. Like, he is very upset that he is in this position in his life where he realized the American dream is actually a nightmare for him. And he can't believe that that's true because he's a white guy. And white men in America, I mean, if you can't succeed in America, like, what the hell, something must be wrong with you. But he'll never admit that there's something wrong with him. And he will never admit that there's something wrong with the dream itself. There's something wrong with the system itself. He cannot believe that there's something wrong with the system. He cannot believe that there's something wrong with him, that he cannot believe in his own inadequacies. He can't stand to look in the mirror and believe that he was inadequate. And he wouldn't dare challenge the system that he loves so much. So what does he do? He blames immigrants and Mexicans. Shout out to all of you people who adopt anti-immigrant rhetoric. You know, this guy's language, real talk, this guy's language, maybe the reason you won't share this on the internet is because this language is very reminiscent of, I mean, with the exception, I want to start with the caveat before people lose their shit. Like, with the exception of the actual call for violence and the manual and the instructions on how to handle an overheating AK-47, with that major exception, the language here is very reminiscent of so many movements, including ADOS. The anti-immigrant language and the fear of being replaced and Democrats using them to take over America. And all right. That's all I got. I don't even, whatever. I'm about to go do something myself. Have a great day, everybody.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.